Hello, this is Christina Barr, you guys are watching Black Tea News. Hello, welcome to Black Tea News. I'm your host, Christina Barr, and there's so much news today. So much news that's really making the waves today. There was a big sort of hint last night that there'd be something coming down from the Ron DeSantis camp, and people were speculating it was campaign-wise, and his spokesperson was like, nope, it's state stuff. And so they are ousting a attorney that said basically they weren't going to follow the laws that they're pushing in Florida. So they're like, okay, you're out. We're going to appoint someone else. And if you're not going to do what the law states, you're out. And he is flexing his power. And a lot of people are angry at Ron DeSantis on the other side of the aisle. And there's people on the right who are just like, you know what? He's the kind of person right now who is wielding the power that he has, that the voters have given him to in the interest of the people of the state, and they like where it's going. So we're going to talk about Ron DeSantis. Also this fallout between like Peter Meijer losing his seat in Michigan over on the west side of the state in District 3. And the Democrats, if you did not know, what you talked about a little bit yesterday, how they actually paid for ads. And they're negative ads, wink, wink, that were supposed to be positive for Republicans. And they raised his name ID. They spent more money in ads than, like, according to Meijer, more money in ads for Gibbs than Gibbs actually raised for his campaign. So it's pretty interesting. And they obviously wanted Gibbs because they feel that he's a person who can be defeated easier compared to Meijer, because the district is we did redistricting and stuff, and so everything's kind of wonkier than it was before. So if they have more blue in that area, Peter Meijer, and who knows if he would have won that seat again, but was more likely to win as a person who was one of the Republicans who impeached Trump versus like someone who said Trump is the greatest president ever. I don't know if he said ever, but whatever. I have one of the ads I want to show you guys, but it's just really goes to show you you can't be nice in the game of politics. It's pretty dirty. I think even the New York Times spoke and said it was dirty. And if you're a Democrat, and which I don't suspect a Democrat is probably watching right now, but man, the way that they're using money to fund make campaign ads, that's really something. You give and they're like, we know exactly what we're going to do with this. We're going to make a positive campaign ad to get out the vote for Republicans. I just don't know if that's the intention that people had when they donated money. Now, I guess if they win, they win, but there's always a chance they could lose. And this sort of strategy worked out really negatively for Democrats in a particular case. Who was that person? President Donald Trump. The strategy really, really backfired before. So we'll see if it backfires again. But Peter Meijer's not the only race they did this with. There was other Republicans that they targeted and decided to fund ads promoting, kind of dissing, but really promoting different people who are more right in blue areas where they feel that they'd have a better chance if they pick the more right candidate. And It's just really dirty. So I want to talk about that. Also, the DOJ has announced that they're going to press charges against 4 police officers who were involved in the shooting of Breonna Taylor. So that's really, really big news. Also, the women's basketball player was detained over in Russia, she got 9.5 years. They threw the book at her. So I guess we'll see if Russia is willing to trade her for a weapons arms dealer. If you ever saw the movie Lord of War, that's allegedly who the film is based off of, the person that they want to trade her for. The Biden administration has offered trading her for, but we'll see how that goes down. But yeah, 9.5 years over in Russia, that would suck. So we will see what happens to her. But lots and lots of news today. Okay, but before we jump into it, I want to encourage you guys to go to blacktnews.com, check out different articles that I have on my website. I just posted one yesterday about this state senator, and I've talked about him several times, Scott Wiener. And he was the one who lowered penalties for knowingly exposing a partner to HIV, for going from making it a misdemeanor rather than a felony. That's weird. I think that's weird. They lowered like the penalty of like having like anal and different kind of sex that's usually more in the homosexual sort of bent, as opposed, because they said it was targeting the gay community versus this other similar law that they can decide whether they're going to go on a sex offenders registry based off of like discretion. Now, why wouldn't you just go, hey, let's make the both laws like equally harsh, rather than let's make one more lax? And so that was weird. And when people criticized and pointed out that law, they're like, you all are all QAnon. I'm like, no, this guy sounds like a weirdo. And so the other day he was I wrote an article because he said that we should stop lecturing gay men and about their sexual behaviors, and it's not going to stop the spread of monkeypox. Just make the vaccines and stuff. Well, they don't even want you to have the vaccines unless you are a gay man and you're promiscuous. So there's that, but like just kind of just pump the brakes. Like he talked about COVID people and wanted them to wear masks and all the other kind of stuff and call them, killers and what. I don't know if he said killers, but he he talked about deliberately killing people. I have the tweet and stuff on the article. But I just found out, and I wish I had like included this. But he also, there was an event with gay men gathering in California, and where they maybe do some stuff, and I don't know, but he like retweeted out some stuff that was like, oh, have a good time. I'm like, why not like kind of discourage this? And he shared like some safe sex practicing sort of things that I'm just like, why don't you just ask people kindly, just knock it off for a little bit, since there's a world health crisis, and this is spreading a lot by sexual transmission. Like, it's like he's so offended if you just ask people to just back off, as if he just believes that gay men are incapable of just being like, you know what, let's just pump the brakes. It's really weird to me. But this guy's a state senator. I don't know what sort of higher aspirations he might have in California other than being a state senator, but I just wanted to highlight him a bit and let you know what's going on over there. Anyway, I got different articles you guys can check out on the website. You guys can check out different merch that we have, like the I Am Not the Victim You're Looking For, Be Better Not Bitter, My Money, My Business, Constitution's Glorious Liberty document, the Trump 2024 Make Crack Whack Again, because the Biden administration's out there giving out crack pipes to people. Got all kinds of merch you guys can check out on the website. If you like what I do here, if you enjoy what I do here, please consider leaving a donation at blacktnews.com/donate. There are costs associated with what I do, the streaming, the website, travel, all that sort of stuff. If you would like to support Black Tea, help Black Tea grow, keep Black Tea News going, please consider leaving a donation on the website with what you can do. I understand that by inflation's hitting hard a lot of people, but if you can, I really appreciate, whether it's small or whether you can give largely, very much appreciate it. Otherwise, I thank you guys for commenting, for liking, for sharing, for tagging different people. When I put out like individual videos, please share those. I mean, share the videos like in the lives altogether, but I just thank you guys for sharing. Make sure you're liking across different social media platforms, on Instagram, on TikTok, on Facebook. All my handles are at Black Teen News, with the exception of Twitter. That one is at True Black Tea. I want to thank Bride of Michigan Pack. I'm in the studio today. If I say something today that triggers you, they don't care. I don't care. It does not work like that. I'm just using the space, and they like to uplift conservative voices. And by the way, I know I announced the other day I'm over 20,000 words on my book that I'm working for regarding abortion. And I will let you guys know when that is done. I'd like to have like a big event if I can, and do a whole big pre-order thing. So I'll let you guys know as that progresses. It's really, really coming along. Got some kind of more final thoughts to write on it. But there's a lot of good information from a secular standpoint, in a Christian perspective, and so on. And I think a lot of people will find it very useful with their conversations and debates that I encourage you guys to have. So let's jump into it. I don't have a meme today. I have a video that I want to show you guys of this TikTok teacher who seems very confused about her student trolled her, and she seemed didn't know exactly where to go with this. So I wanted to show you guys, because this kid's a hero.
Okay, TikTok, I really need your help here on this one. I'm a teacher. I teach fifth and sixth grade, and this morning, I don't know, somehow the concept of pronouns came up. And one of my students said, "Well, Miss Odell, did you even ask me my pronouns?" And I was like, whoa, I hadn't actually asked him his pronouns, and I had called him a him, and I said, "Oh, I'm so sorry. I haven't actually asked you what your pronouns are. And what are they?" And he said, Banana said, "Banana and rock." And I was like, dude, no, like, don't mess around. I was actually really upset, because I thought he was making fun of it. And in fact, I'm still pretty sure he was making fun of it. And, but they all agreed, no, like, you can choose anything. Banana, rock, if you want banana and rock to be a pronoun, banana and rock's your pronoun. Is it? TikTok, tell me.
So is it, guys? Is it anything? Can you be banana and rock if you so say those are your pronouns? By the way, Demi Lovato was a they them for a little bit, and Demi Lovato decided to go back to she her. And she said the explanation was, when she was they them, she felt very balanced, and now she's just kind of, and when you're being a they them is just about being human, right? It's just, you're balanced and you're human. And I'm just thinking, as I'm listening, I'm just like, aren't we all human right now? Like, if you're a woman and you're identify as she her, aren't you still human? And if you're a man, aren't you still human? It's like, they them isn't about just feeling human. That's okay if that's what you're going with. But then she says right now she's feeling a more feminine energy, and she's very fluid. So I don't know. The girl needs help still, I see. And poor thing. I'll just leave it at that. I'll just leave it at that. So let's talk about Ron DeSantis. So he had a pretty big announcement. Christina Pushaw teased last night. I don't know how late last night, but I was like salivating. I'm like, what is it? Because she said there's going to be some news coming out in the morning, and it's going to make liberals and the medias and their head spin. And so people were speculating, like, it's kind of a little early if he's thinking about announcing that he's going to run for president. It's very coy. Everyone suspects. But I just thought it was too early for that. I'm like, what's happening? And so she said, it's not a campaign announcement. I'm like, okay. And so then I was just like, what else can he do? What is he about to do? So she kept good on her promise, and DeSantis had some announcements today, and one of them, I'm sure, making people's heads spin. So let's look at a little bit of a snippet of his video that they posted.
people in one part of the state to have veto power over what the entire state decides on these important issues. The Constitution of Florida has vested the veto power in the governor, not in individual state attorneys. And so when you flagrantly violate your oath of office, when you make yourself above the law, you have violated your duty. You have neglected your duty, and you are displaying a lack of competence to be able to perform those duties. And so today we are suspending State Attorney Andrew Warren effective immediately. We are not going to allow this pathogen that's been around the country of ignoring the law. We are not going to let that get a foothold here in the state of Florida. We are going to make sure that our laws are enforced and that no individual prosecutor puts himself above the law.
So kudos to Ron DeSantis. So a lot of people like Ron because he likes to take the fight right to him and understands the sort of people that he's dealing with. His press spokesperson knows exactly the kind of people that she's dealing with. And if you follow her Twitter page or anything like that, you know that she also wants to inform everyone else the sort of people that she's dealing with. And there's been so many crazy things that people have said about Ron DeSantis, things that, during COVID and lockdowns. And I mean, even like Florida has a high rate of people who go there to retire. So they do have an elderly population, but even them prioritizing them getting them COVID shots for protection, they're like, she's prioritizing his donors and getting them. I'm like, bro, like what? Like people just maybe they vote red, but they need the vaccine. Just really crazy stuff how they politicize every single little thing. And then there was like a snippet on I think that particular news story, how they had a snippet that they put on 60 Minutes versus how the actual interview was just really dishonest how they frame a lot of things with the media. So they know exactly the kind of people that they're dealing with, and they don't entertain them. And they just want to punch him right back. So a lot of people appreciate what he's doing. This particular attorney that they are knocking has said that he, doesn't intend on, following the law as far as what they make with abortion prosecutions or regarding transgender ideology and all the other kind of stuff. So they're like, okay, you don't want to enforce the law as we write them and we put them into place. If your allegiance isn't to, the state law, constitution, whatever, we're gonna knock you and make sure that someone else goes in place, because we do need people who are going to follow the law. We have an issue in Michigan right now where we do have an abortion ban on the books, and there are there's been suing and other stuff like that with the governor she's trying to sue her way into making them acknowledge that that we do have a right to an abortion in the Constitution, which we don't. But right now there's a stay order, I believe, that was granted. But our Attorney General already made it clear before there was the overturning of Roe v. Wade that she doesn't plan on going after anyone or following that particular law. And she's like, that's not the reason why I became Attorney General. And I'm just like, why did you become Attorney General? It wasn't to follow the law. Why did you do that? And it's personal for her. I understand, 'cause she once, took the life of her child. So it is personal for her. But she won't even step aside and let someone in her office take over that stuff. She's like, I'm not getting involved with that unless the court makes me get involved with it. So we're not supposed to function like that when you just have people who are supposed to carry out the law who won't do it if it doesn't suit them. So kudos to Ron DeSantis. and hopefully in Michigan we get some competent people who end up winning in November, and we don't have to be led by these folks much longer. But people appreciate that DeSantis will punch back, which unfortunately politics is just a dirty game, and Democrats make it known that they don't want any sort of people who they deem moderate, or you don't even have to. I wouldn't even. They just don't. They don't care. They don't want you in the office, which I understand is it's a party politics game. Why would you want someone across the aisle in? But what they did with like Peter Meijer and John Gibbs, and they're funding different Republicans who they believe will lose. And so this is how you know that they don't think Republicans are as dangerous as what they say. Like, oh, they're going to take over democracy and we'll never have elections again. And they're so if they were so dangerous, you'd be doing your best to make sure that someone, if they thought John Gibbs was so dangerous, they would do whatever they can to make sure that he does not win, in helping Peter in the primary. And even if Peter won his seat again, they'd be like, well, at least it's not that other guy. Like, I was just on the phone talking to my sister about all this, and I'm like, you know what? I understand that some people want the craziest person to win because they think they'll be the easiest to defeat. But I take no pleasure in the left being as insane as they are. I don't like that we are in a state of like such demagoguery where there's the Attorney General, Dana Nessel, for example, I would just mention her, that she's like a drag queen for every school, and drag queens lift you up when you're sad, and it's great, like all that. I'm like, what? Why? In schools and libraries, really? Like, that's where we're at, like pushing that. And so I was having a conversation one day, like, because I had made a video about Dana Nessel and some of her in her comments showing some drag queen shows that were very not appropriate, but people thought they were, I guess, enough to bring the drag queens there. And so there was I was talking to a Democrat, and they're like, man, I wish they wouldn't do stuff like this. And I'm like, I would much rather just have, like, we have disagreements, but it's not that big of a gap. I don't want to feel like so much dread when someone else is in office that I didn't vote for. I don't want to feel like that. It's not a good feeling. So Dana Nessel, not Dana Nessel, Haley Stevens was versus Andy Levin. And Haley Stevens ended up winning. Now, I don't like Haley Stevens. Haley Stevens, I had a conversation with Haley Stevens. She didn't know I was Republican. I went to her debate and stuff. And I asked her about when do the unborn get a right to life. She would not answer my question. She wouldn't answer my question. She actually tried to change the topic. She was like, oh, where are you from? And I answered a little bit. And I'm like, but you know what? You didn't answer my question. Respectfully, you didn't answer my question. And she's like, oh, you're really pressing me. I'm like, I think it's a really easy question. Like, when do the unborn get any rights? Do they have a right to life? And she just would not answer the question. She wouldn't answer the question. And so, you know, that's a radical thing to me. Like, because if you won't answer, but you think women have a right to abortion, like theoretically, like, are you saying up to 9 months is fine? Which some people have said stuff like that. And so that's going to be my assumed position. I think that's a pretty radical, extreme position, because we are talking about like taking the life of someone else. Okay. So I think she's a radical person, but Andy Levin is a crazier person. He's a crazier person. When I was in the debate and he like said something along the lines of, our laws aren't good enough, like we have to have discriminatory laws. I'm like, well, oh my gosh, he just on the debate stage was like, racism is okay, like, basically. But you know what? That's in the Democrat Party platform, and that's actually like right out of like critical race theory. But that's where they are. That's the direction that they're going with the party. And so I'm not going to vote for Haley Stevens. I'm going to vote for the Republican candidate. But I'm like, man, I hope she wins, because I would rather have her than Andy Levin. I didn't say let's vote for Andy Levin because he's more radical. Maybe we can beat him. I didn't say that. So these people who have these tactics that are like, oh, let's get the most radical Republican in so we can defeat them. If you really feel that they are that bad for America, you should be doing everything you can to keep them in office. I mean, out of office, not not pushing for them to be elected because you think it's an easy ticket. Because there's a chance that could always backfire. As a matter of fact, it did backfire big time in 2016 because the only real strategy that Hillary Clinton had, the only real strategy that she really, really had was to get Donald Trump to be the nominee. And I know because I read those WikiLeaks. I read those emails, and her staff was like concerned about it because they were like, she's focusing too much on like that being her fallback, like Trump being the nominee. They were concerned about someone like Marco Rubio, because I guess they thought he had like a wider appeal across the aisle, and they wanted Ben Carson, Ted Cruz, or Donald Trump. Those were the ones, and you could see like the media. They were very friendly with the media and stuff. If you read the emails, that's something that really concerned me. I'm like, the media is like so in the Democrats' pocket, it's kind of scary. But so they really, really pushed in the media to have Trump be the person. Like, they hate him on the Morning Joe now, but he was on there all the time during the primary. He got so much free media from them. And so people were concerned, like on the right side of the aisle, because they're like, what they're going to do is they have all this press of him and they're lifting him up. But as soon as it's over, they're going to flip and just dump all this stuff on him. And, Trump survived it, obviously. At the end of the day, they still hated her more than they hated him. And there are people who really love him, but man, there are people who hated her who voted for Trump. Hated her who's rather like, you know what, let's just blow up the whole system. Let's vote for Trump. And I know I talked to people like that who I was like, you voted for Trump? Like, so surprised because they thought she was worse at the very least. So they overestimated. So their strategy was to get Trump to win the primary, and they're like, there's no way he's going to win in the general. That was their thing. But they should have been like, you know what? Let's hope the most sensible Republican wins, and hopefully we'll have a good fight, we'll have a good race, and then we'll win. That's what they could do. Now, I don't know if it's I think they are exaggerating how dangerous they think these Republicans are. I think that's really exaggerated. There is like a hysteria associated with them, though. I asked Matt Gaetz this on Mackinac. I was like, how much is real? Like, how much of it is real in theater and stuff? And he said January 6th really changed a lot. Like, before, you could have like conversations, eat or whatever with the other side of the aisle. And he's like, since January 6th, there's people who won't even like get on the same elevator with you. So, I don't know. So some of it, they could actually believe that these people are too dangerous for America. But why would you risk America in such a way if you thought like John Gibbs was such a threat? Why would you do that? You're just a very bad person. But let me show you one of these ads that they ran against John Gibbs.
John Gibbs is too conservative for West Michigan. Handpicked by Trump to run for Congress, Gibbs called Trump the greatest president and worked in Trump's administration with Ben Carson. Gibbs has promised to push that same conservative agenda in Congress, a hard line against immigrants at the border, and so-called patriotic education in our schools. The Gibbs-Trump agenda is too conservative for West Michigan. DCCC is responsible for the content of this advertising.
So it's so not a bad ad, but they ran it like it was a bad ad for the purposes of Republicans would see it on TV and be like, oh, he's a Trump guy. Oh, he's going to be tough on the border. And think how crazy that is. This part of the ad is like the craziest to me.
A hard line against immigrants at the border and so-called patriotic education in our schools.
To me, it's crazy that they put that in an ad and was like, that's too dangerous for West Michigan. That's insane. That's insane. What they like I know the purpose of the ad was to attract Republicans and be like, "Oh, I got to vote for that guy. The Democrats hate him and he's going to fix the border." Heck yeah. But if Democrats like saw that ad and if they're going, "Oh, that's awful. They want patriotic education. They want to do something about our border." That's open wide. That would be crazy to me if a Democrat like saw that section of that section in the ad and was like, "Oh, he's too conservative." This ad's hilarious. No, so anyway, they spent more money like on ads for Gibbs, and according to Peter Meijer, he said that they spent more money on ads for Gibbs than Gibbs was able to raise. So Democrats, in the media, whatever, they can say stuff like, "Oh, Peter Meijer, he did this thing within impeachment, and not every Republican is crazy." And there are some good ones, like that's a good one over there. But at the end of the day, it doesn't. If you vote R, they're going to get rid of you. If you don't bow down to their agenda, they're going to get rid of you at the end of the day. Kinzinger has made some pretty bad votes as of late. Really bad, like might as well switch your name to D votes. And he voted some good stuff, like in party alignment when Trump was in office, but like some of his votes have been wackadoodle as of late, like angry, like you hear something news and you're like, how could Republicans cross the aisle? Kinzinger has voted for it. So he's made some bad votes as of lately, but that doesn't matter because the Democrats and stuff, they still like basically have redistricted him out of a job. That's why he's like not coming back. He's like redistrict out of a job. Boom, gone. So most Republicans who voted, there was like 10 altogether. At the most, maybe 3 aren't going to. Most of them decided to retire. Meijer has now lost. Cheney, I don't think that has happened yet, but she will lose. It's looking. So at the most, there might be 3 out of the 10 remaining, maybe. If any. But I haven't looked at all Meijer's votes, but like when some of those crazier bills go and you hear Republicans crossed over, I haven't seen his name, I don't think. So he's not a sellout in like total regard or anything like that, but people never got over the impeachment vote, which I don't think it was I guess I'd like to talk to him about it and see if he was still thought that was the right thing to do, because there were things that they talked about and claimed in the impeachment trial that happened very fast that weren't accurate. So and at that time people were like, "Oh, they thought there were different cops who had been killed that day," or we know the only person who died like a direct result or whatever was actual the woman who was shot, who was a Trump supporter. So there's just so much that was myth at the time during the impeachment vote. So really it was too fast anyway, regardless how you felt about it. It'd be different if they had more findings, like they had the whole January 6th thing and then they were going to vote for stuff, but the impeachment happened so just way too fast. And I don't feel, I can understand the emotional vote there at the time. I still don't agree with it, obviously, but I wonder if looking back, if they feel still justified in their vote. Like Cheney, I'm sure would, but Bill Kristol's site, the Bulwark, they wrote about Peter Meijer and they just trashed him, and they were mad about Peter Meijer. He wrote complaining about the Democrats funding Gibbs. And it's really crazy, their response to him. They're like, "Don't be upset at Peter Meijer." I'm going to read some of this because it's just wild. They said a few days ago, Peter Meijer went crying to Barry Weiss's Substack about how terrible and mean the Democrats are for running ads, which accurately and negatively described his primary opponent, the conspiracy nut and MAGA standout, John Gibbs. It was deeply unfair, Meijer wrote. And they're quoting Meijer right now. You would think that the Democrats will look at John Gibbs and see the embodiment of what they say they fear the most. As patriots, they would use every tool at their disposal to defeat him and similar candidates that they've said that they are an existential threat. Instead, they are funding Gibbs. And I just complained, and I agree with Peter's assessment that if they think he is such a threat, why did they fund him? They should be trying to defeat him. I agree with that line of thinking. Over the past year, in private and in public, these Democrat colleagues praised the courage of Republicans like me. Majority Leader Steny Hoyer called my vote an impressive display of courage and integrity to leading Democrats. We were the good Republicans. At the same time, to some in my party, we were bad Republicans, rhinos at best, traitors at the worst. After the impeachment vote, I was immediately censured by 2 county parties in my old district, and in my new district, the Republican Party of the largest county repudiated me a few weeks ago. The Michigan GOP chair joked about my assassination. There have been too many online threats to count. Watching the unraveling inside my party has been utterly bewildering. The only thing that has been more nauseating has been the capacity of my Democratic colleagues to sell out any pretense or of principle for political expediency, at once decrying the downfall of democracy while rationalizing the use of their hard-raised dollars to prop up the supposed object of their fears. And they said, so this is a Bulwark, Bill Kristol's site. Bill didn't write this. Bill's a neocon, old school conservative. He thinks he is anyway, but he's lost himself. He says the craziest stuff now. I would not consider him a conservative, but this is his in his paper. He's right. It's unfair, just like it's unfair that some people are born into 50 million trust fund. I'm like, okay. so just know the shade. The world can be a cold, cruel place. But I want to unpack Meijer's complaint, and by extension, the complaints of all the other antis who are upset this morning about the choices Republican voters keep making. Let's start with the DCCC. They ran ads explaining to Michigan voters what sort of crazy person Meijer's opponent was. These were not positive ads. They accurately described Gibbs' nuttiness. I showed you guys an ad, right? I showed you one of the ads. The ad was not nutty in the least bit. These ads were purely negative, but also DCC knew what they were doing. They were helping Gibbs by raising his name ID with voters who would see the negatives as positives by voters who want crazy. The DCCC ad buys were, as I wrote at the time, foolish, dishonorable, and dangerous, but also they were not the whole story. They are, in fact, the only very small part of the story. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but just to summarize, they're mad at Meijer because, yeah, he did vote to impeach Trump, but they don't feel like he really, really stood by it. Like he really went out there and kept saying, yeah, this is why he did it, and I'm justified. And they're like, it kind of seems like he tries not to talk about it. Now I'm like, guys, like, why would he constantly keep talking about something that happened a while ago now, over a year, and something that his voters resent him for? Something that may have in his mind been a mistake. I don't know how he feels about it, but it was an emotional move at the time, I would say. But I don't know how in his heart and his mind how justified he feels that it is or not, it's not. But he knows that it's something that his voters are angry about. So why would he keep talking about it? Like, this is such a dumb thing to hold against him. And they're also upset because he doesn't know that his voters are, basically it seems like they want Peter Meijer to acknowledge that the problem is his voters are crazy. And a lot of these like people like Bill Kristol and so on, I remember like Rush Limbaugh talking about certain like people within the Republican Party who just kind of hated conservatives and hated um more of the super right or really religious people, or like complaining about folks like Sarah Palin and even stuff like the RNC, or I don't know if the RNC, but different like people putting money into like getting her nice clothes. And like, oh, what's wrong with her? Like, I don't just complain about every little thing that about people like her, people who would vote like people like her. Like they really resent people in their base. And there are people in the Republican Party, just like there are people in the Democrat Party who are kind of wacky. I'm not gonna lie about that. But and there's, it's a big tent. You're not going to agree with everybody and on every stance. If there's even like people who you might deem really rational, and you're like, that was all right. Like that can happen all the time, but that doesn't mean that that you just throw the whole baby out with the bathwater. But it seems like these neocons want them to do that and wanted Meijer to do that. They're offended by Meyer's statement that he said the only thing that has been more nauseating has been the capacity of my Democrat colleagues to sell out any pretense of principle for political expediency. So they're upset that he's pointing, like, instead of trashing Republicans for preferring dibs, they're mad at him for pointing out that the Democrats are promoting Gibbs. And Peter Meijer is right to call them out, because if, like I said, if they really think that there's such a threat to democracy, then why would you fund them? Why would you help them get elected? You should say, we'd rather have Meijer, or help Meijer at least, and then defeat him on the battleground respectfully. But that's not what they wanted to do. So either they don't care about America enough and they're willing to risk it just to beat a Republican, or they're lying about how dangerous these people are. Again, that Gibbs ad that I showed you, I've not seen all of them, but I showed you one that they paid for. Not a crazy ad. Not a crazy ad in the least. Like there's people who see Trump and they start like having their demons start, I don't know, convulsing inside of them. I don't know. So I'm sure people would see that and not like Trump and be like, oh, that's Trump's guy, not gonna vote for them. But like if he thought it was crazy because he said he wanted like patriotic like education, as opposed to what? As opposed to what? Oh boy. But the last thing I just kind of want to point out from Peter Meijer's whole situation is that today, I think maybe it was today, but there was a unity. There was a unity dinner, a unity breakfast yesterday, and I don't know if this was at the breakfast or this was another event, but people were complaining about Meijer here. And by the way, he's not hugging Gibbs. That's not him hugging Gibbs in the second picture. Maybe that was the image that they wanted to put out, as if, oh, Meijer was crazy the whole time. He had the audacity to hug him. That's not him hugging him in the picture, but he did introduce Gibbs, and people are like, oh, after all this, he dared to introduce him. And it's like, I thought you guys wanted people to lose elections gracefully. I thought that was like your complaint for the past like 2 years, that Republicans can't accept the results of the election. Well, Democrats helped Peter Meijer lose, and this is the result that they got. And Peter Meijer graciously accepted his fate that the voters decided was appropriate, and he introduced them at this event, and it is what it is. And he gave people are even talking about his like speech, and they're upset, and it's not it's nothing to be upset about. He's like, in the spirit of unity, this is such a fantastic event every cycle. I will say there are a few cameras and reporters that there were, I think, in the 2020 Unity breakfast out in the pavilion, but it's been my honor to serve the district. It's been the honor of a lifetime to be Republican nominee in the 2020 cycle. Now that this is an honor, we're passing off to John Gibbs. So another round of applause for John. I called him last night around 1:30 in the morning and shared what I think anyone in this room who has run for office knows, that just putting yourself out there is really, really miserable, terrifying, and trying experience, whether it's in the sweetness of victory or the bitterness of defeat. I think of what Teddy Roosevelt said about the man in the arena. I think that is important to note, because we have a lot of candidates who are going to be going forward in some of the tough general elections. I was telling you, points to Gibbs, to hope to win in the primary, so you can double and triple the work that you put in a general, so you can double and triple the work in office. So nothing gets easier from there, but this is a hard fought race decided by less than 4,000 votes out of over 100,000 cast. It was a long race, but a race that John ran very well. So I kind of spoiled it on the clapping earlier, but just want to now officially send my congratulations and wish you the best of luck in all that is to come. Your Republican nominee for Michigan's 3rd congressional district, John Gibbs. So I thought that was very gracious of him. I did say, kind of concerned the other day, I'm like, I hope, like, they at least get together and try to win this race and don't just tank him out of spite. So I do appreciate that he accepted the results of the election, was there to do that. And that was at the Unity breakfast. So that was yesterday. So Democrats are upset, though, upset at this, the audacity of it. But if they really felt like Gibbs and these Republicans that they're funding, and there's more than just Gibbs, they wouldn't act this way. They would not act this way. Anyway, moving on. The DOJ has decided to bring charges against 4 of the police officers in the Breonna Taylor case. Here's just a bit of Merrick Garland talking about it.
We allege that the defendants knew their actions in falsifying the affidavit could create a dangerous situation, and we allege these unlawful acts resulted in Ms. Taylor's death. The charges announced today also allege that the officers responsible for falsifying the affidavit that led to the search took steps to cover up their unlawful conduct after Ms. Taylor was killed. We allege that defendants Janes and Goodlett conspired to knowingly falsify an investigative document that was created after Ms. Taylor's death. We also allege that they conspired to mislead federal, state, and local authorities who were investigating the incident. For example, we allege that in May 2020, those 2 defendants met in a garage where they agreed to tell investigators a false story. The indictment separately alleges that defendant Meany lied to the FBI during its investigation of this matter.
So they're alleging that the affidavit, whatever, that led to the warrant that they executed for her boyfriend that ended up in Breonna's death wasn't legit. And I guess my initial thoughts about all this is, when I heard about the incident, I'm like, this sounds terrible. And I start reading about it. I'm like, they're not going to get charged. Because if they did execute and they had the warrant and they did everything lawfully, not that it wasn't tragic, but it was in what they were allowed to do, and they'd have to prove that everyone who participated, I guess, knew that it was a bad warrant, because I guess that's always been like a question or whatever. If they can prove that everyone had knowledge of like false information that led to that warrant that led to her, death, then that's one thing. But if they can't, then they were going to get off. And so they ultimately weren't charged. And this was a huge story. This was a huge narrative also. A lot of things people heard about the story, a lot of narrative surrounding the story just wasn't true. There's people who believed that when they painted as the police showed up, and killed Breonna Taylor in her bed. Like, not even that part of the story is true. So there's a lot of myth surrounding this story. As far as the charges that the DOJ brought, I don't totally trust the DOJ. These are the DOJ also, decided to list like parents as domestic terrorists after the White House conspired with the National School Board Association to write a letter suggesting that they use the Patriot Act to against some of these people. So I don't doubt and wouldn't put it past that they'd be willing to bring some kind of case, even if they can't win on the grounds of some kind of civil rights and kudos and things that people would be talking about heading into the midterms rather than inflation and other kind of stuff. But that does not mean that they don't actually have a case. It doesn't mean that they don't have a case. So if the evidence bears out that they knowingly had false information to fudge stuff so they could get a warrant and that they were aware of that, then they're going to go down in flames. If the evidence doesn't bear that out, I'm not certain anymore that they still won't go down in flames. Not certain of that at all. But I hope that the DOJ would not be moving forward unless they had credible information regarding the falsifying of all this stuff. That is my hope. And I guess that's really all I have to say about that. I mean, there is such myth surrounding the story of Breonna Taylor, especially like in national media and in social media. I've read a lot of reports that local media went into like even like the call logs between her boyfriend and there was just so much stuff that people believe that just was not ultimately true regarding this case. But once I was reading into it, I was just like, they're not going to be charged. And that ultimately that's what they decided. And man, people were not happy. People were grieved. People were, I think they announced that, was that right before 2020 when they said that? Maybe. I mean, I'm talking about the election. But if they have that evidence, like I can see cops getting together after all this is blown out of, I wouldn't say out of proportion, but just blew up in the media the way that they did. I can understand two people getting together and trying to get the story together. If like, did they actually like say like, hey, we're gonna lie and we lied and we're gonna cover up our lie? I don't know. I can guess that they probably met in a garage. It's probably true. Does that mean they met to conspire to keep telling a lie? Hopefully they have evidence for that. And hopefully they have evidence for, not because I want to see a conviction one way or another, but I would just hope that our DOJ isn't that tainted that they would bring this story back into such highlight just for political gain. So we will see as more details come out, and if the facts bear out that they lied about how they obtained that warrant, they are screwed. They're screwed, I think. Now, what another interesting thing to note, they did have a no-knock warrant, which people like Rand Paul really hate, and they didn't care anyway. They still attacked him at the RNC convention. Poor Rand Paul. He's like really been a victim of politics. So, but they did actually knock. Now, and they did alert that they were the police and for enough time for him to get up and get dressed and get his gun and other kind of stuff. But they knew that they should have known that the police were at the door, and they did knock. Now, maybe if they hadn't knocked, maybe they would be alive. I don't know. She'd be alive. Who knows? So there's the debate still rages on whether you should have no knock warrants or not, but they did actually knock. But it was a no knock warrant. So just wanted to put that out there. I don't know how this will turn out. We just got to see how the facts are. Yeah, they did knock. Got a comment. They did knock and announce that they were the police. So they didn't even really execute the warrant properly in the way that they should have. If it all hinges on if they can prove that they knowingly lied to obtain information to get that warrant that ultimately ended up in this altercation that ended up with her death. And a lot of people I know are very emotional surrounding this case, and I just gotta wait for some more facts. Like I tried to wait. I always try to wait for facts, and all the facts that I kind of saw, I'm just like, I knew they weren't going to be charged, and people were very passionate about this. I'm like, I know they're not going to be charged, and if there's some countering evidence, which they knew, I don't think it can just be that it was badly obtained, but they have to have known. There was one of the officers who's just kind of shooting recklessly, though. He might get the book thrown at him regardless. So we'll see what happens. I briefly had mentioned that the women's NBA player, WNBA player, Grimer, the book was thrown at her. She has 9.5 years. I guess I don't have much more to say than that. The Biden administration did want to swap her for a Russian arms dealer, like a global kind of arms dealer that Lord of War is apparently based off of. I don't know if they're going to go for that or not, because I think this makes that would be a very valuable swap, I think, to them, a good one that they'd probably want to have. But at the same time, I think this is becoming obviously a international story, and if it makes Biden look weak and America looks weak, maybe that's good enough for them. So I don't know if she's going to get out or not, but she did get 9.5 years over a drug possession charge. Okay, as I said, there's a lot of news today. A lot of in there. I suspect there'll be a lot of news still tomorrow. Thank you guys for joining me today. If you would like to support Black Tea News, you can go to blacktnews.com/donate. There are costs associated with what I do, with the streaming, with the websites and all that kind of stuff, travel. If you would like to support, you can go to the website and do so. I very much appreciate any gift that you can give, whether it's large or small. Please make sure that you're liking, subscribing across Facebook, YouTube, TikTok, Instagram. I know a lot of people like to watch on Facebook, but please make sure that you're still like subscribing on YouTube and across everywhere else. All my handles are at Black Tea News, black like the color, tea like the drink, with the exception of Twitter. That one is at True Black Tea. Again, thank you to Brighter Michigan Pack. I'm in their studio. And again, we don't care if we triggered you today. Check out different merchandise that we have on the store, like the goat hoodies and the goat shirts. Please check out like the Denounce White Supremacy, Defeat Joe Biden shirt. There's a list of his racism on the back, and there's other goodies that you guys can get at the website. I'll let you guys know, continue to keep you in the loop as I continue writing my nonfiction book regarding the issue of abortion and the Christian perspective. There's a lot of stuff that you can take as a secular person. I usually argue from a secular position, but I do feel like this is something needed for the pro-choice pastors of the world, like Warnock in Georgia and those who may support him. But I do have nonfiction books that you guys can also check out. My book website is ninjadustpublishing.com, but you guys can go to blacktnews.com, and there's a merchandise button that shows you how you guys can get to my book website. But if you search me on Amazon, Christina Barr, you'll be able to find me. I've got children's chapter books. I've got young adult fantasy, paranormal romance, all that kind of stuff you guys can check out. I got historical fiction books. These are my babies right here, my babies. And I do have one nonfiction book that is called Slay Your Fear: How to Overcome a Spirit of Fear. I wrote that in the midst of the pandemic, and when people were very terrified, and I wish they had taken my advice. They did not, but the book is still good. It's still valid. So go ahead and pick up that book. There was my sister ended up selling one of those books at an event. I got to tell you the story. It's pretty funny, but I'm out of time, so I'm gonna table that for another day. Thank you guys for watching and tuning in today, and I will see you guys tomorrow. God bless.